So as I mentioned before work the other day, Masters of the Universe Revelation is getting a second season under the title Revolution. And I talked about a lot of stuff there. Basically, like what we pretty much can be assured of that will happen in Revolution, but also what potentially could be. And one of the things I touched upon too is a lot of folks kind of having like a mixed reaction. Now there's no doubt a lot of people that were behind Revelation and supported it are looking forward to this new season under this new title. But there are also those that, as I said, didn't like, pretty much the first half, but were okay with the second half because the second half seemed to be a bit of an improvement, but not much. So now the question obviously is, how is the Revolution, the second season of Revelation, going to be like? And here's the thing about the MOTU, the Mortu, Mortu fan base. They are like any fan base. They're very finicky, very particular about how you portray the characters, and how not only how you portray them, but how you're going to feature them in an overarching plot. As far as this upcoming second season is concerned, a lot of people still obviously, and I know this is not agreed upon by a lot of folks, but a lot of people still feel very indifferent about how Teela was portrayed in Revelation. They didn't like the fact that even though she's supposed to be the Teela from the Filmation series, she acted completely like a bitch in their eyes. She was just upset. I'll say it honestly, she was homoetically upset, we'll put it that way, because nobody, I guess, wanted to tell her, oh, by the way, Adam, who you have a crush on, and He-Man, who you have a crush on, are one and the same. But I think if you look at the second half, and even though some people don't like the idea that, oh, she's going to be a sorceress of her own own doing and everything, be able to do things her mother, the sorceress, wasn't able to do originally. You can kind of tell in that second half, and even I guess from what I watched and heard, kind of towards the end of the first half of Revelation, that, and she kind of started to have an understanding as to why she wasn't told right away the secret. Like basically, she kind of, I guess, figured out, even though she probably wasn't expecting to figure out this way, that the reason she wasn't told was basically her mother and anybody else around felt and believed she wasn't ready. But here's the thing about Teela, though. Everybody says that if she is the Teela from, or was supposed to be the Teela from the Filmation series, then that Teela, yeah, she might have been upset, but she'd be more accepting, of the situation than what we saw in Revelation. So the question obviously is, how is she going to grow from that in Revolution? Is she going to be basically like she's promised herself she's going to be? She's going to be a sorceress that does more than just occasionally leave the castle to help out, but just, and instead, I should say, be out there in the thick of it, if you will. One of the things I mentioned is there's this, I guess this character, I can't think of his name right now. He starts with an E, and he's supposed to be like the god, if you will, of Eternia. Basically, he's supposed to be like, the higher power, if you will. And I mentioned before, in where I talked about the second season happening, what we could see, I talked about, potentially this higher power coming in conflict with Tila. I even think I mentioned this after the first season was done. I said that this potentially could be something that works well as a subsidiary plot or a subplot in the second season, because here you would have Tila wanting to fulfill her promise to herself to be more active, unlike her mom, in the role of sorceress, but then find out that the higher power that even her mom had to answer to is preventing her from doing so, because she's meant to stay mainly at the castle, with a few exceptions. Like, maybe, okay, you can leave the castle here and there, but you got to come back. And I think in context, as far as a sub arc in the second season story, I think that could work. I think that could really work, because you could have her confront this higher power and be like, look, I'm not like my mom, or anything. Yes, I've taken on the mantle of sorceress, but I'm not going to be like my mom. I'm going to be a sorceress that's more active. And you can have this higher power basically say, yes, I understand that, and I respect that, but if you leave here, you leave Castle Grayskull, you lose your power as sorceress. This is why your mother never traveled so far from Castle Grayskull. Like, maybe she'll go to as far as Snake Mountain or something like that, but she didn't go any further, because the further she gets away from Castle Grayskull, the more she loses her magic. So that could be something that happens, in the second season. But as I said in the previous video, we may not know that until we see the series. I also mentioned the fact that we could have She-Ra potentially appear. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but when you really think about it, 83 is when the Masters of the Universe, the He-Man cartoon, and pretty much the entire franchise really took off. It was celebrating 40 years next year of that. And, the cartoon, and I think we're celebrating 40 years currently of the overall franchise right now. You could have her appear. I mean, there are plans to do a She-Ra live action series, so why not do something from the Netflix side of things to tie into the Amazon side of things, even though they'll be two completely different characters, or versions, if you will. And like I said, you could have her maybe confront Tila and say, like, hey, I've been watching you for years, seeing how you basically turned your back on everybody until years later, where you finally learned that, hey, this is your destiny, and maybe there was a reason you weren't told. I mean, I could see potentially a confrontation between the two, to where it's an understanding one, but still She-Ra could be like, look, I understand your anger and everything, but you shouldn't have, shouldn't have acted the way you did, because nobody told you anything. Because when you think about it, maybe and hopefully you have learned and realized you weren't ready yet until the time was right, which is right now. So I know that may have not made much sense or anything, but still, I could see them doing something like that if she was to be brought in. Because like I said, if you're going to possibly bring in Hordak, that's a possibility of her showing up, being more real as the time goes on. Another thing, though, that we have to look at with Revolution, just like with Revelation, is where we have death. I mean, we had Adam die temporarily, we had other characters die and everything. So the question is, will we see more of that? And it looks like, from what I can understand, I guess the poster is hinting at, that King Randor is going to die. Not saying that's true, but it does look like we're heading in that direction of potentially the king dying. But how it will happen, we do not know. But it does. The poster does give off that vibe and everything. So we'll have to see what happens there, how they build to that. If it happens right off the bat, or it's something that ends at the concludes the entire season. Like, Randor sacrifices himself, and there you go. We'll have to see. Another thing too is, you're bringing in the Horde, you're bringing in Hordak. You have to wonder if we're going to see Horde Prime. That's another question too, because we saw Horde Prime in the Princesses of Power series and everything, but will we see this version of Horde Prime show up here? That'll be interesting. How powerful, what is he going to look like? How powerful is he going to be? Will we find out why Hordak serves under him and stuff? That's something I would like to see. Again, along with the possibility that if you're going to be bringing all that in, all these elements from She-Ra, the original Filmation She-Ra, or at least identical to it, then you need to bring her in some capacity. So hopefully we'll get that as well. Or maybe they do their own interpretation of She-Ra. Like, as I mentioned in a previous video, what if Lynn, Evelyn now, as she's called, as a way to redeem herself, gets granted power and she becomes this show's interpretation of She-Ra. That might be something that, even though a lot of people may not like it, could kind of tie up the whole okay, we can't get that She-Ra, but we'll make our own She-Ra kind of situation. It could tie that up, saying, hey, we can't get this She-Ra, but we can do our own She-Ra. There you go. But it's going to be interesting to see how they tie this all together, in Revolution. Now here's the thing. We know right now everything's being held tight-lipped by Kevin Smith and his crew, so that what happened with the previous season, and information getting out before it should have, to places like Clownfish TV, we know that they're keeping it tight-lipped now so history doesn't repeat itself. But honestly, guys, I think we are going to get information leaked out soon. I mean, Kevin Smith and his crew, those at Netflix, those at Powerhouse, they can do all they want, they could do the best job they can, but I think sooner than later we will have information leaked out about Revolution, whether they like it or not. And I'm not going to put it past Clownfish TV to be one of the first to talk about it when that happens. But yeah, right now, as I said in the first video, all we can really do is speculate as to what potentially we could see here occurring in the second season. How is Teela going to fulfill her promise as the new Sorceress to do more than what her mom did? Will there be a confrontation with that higher power that prevents her from doing it? Because maybe the further she goes away from Castle Grayskull, the more she loses her power. I don't know. We'll have to see. And then there's other questions like Andrea, who's the new man-at-arms, woman-at-arms. What role will she play? Will she become the new She-Ra? Like, will she become this show's interpretation of She-Ra to stand alongside Adam as He-Man? We don't know. But again, it'll be interesting to see and find out. And like I said, I've got a feeling that no matter how tight-lipped and how secretive Kevin Smith and his crew want to be about this, that eventually information is going to leak out, whether he wants to admit that or not. So we'll just have to just sit back, wait and see. But if I was to make a guess as to when information might leak out potentially about Revolution, I would say it's going to be around the fall. I would assume between mid-September, early November is when we'll get information leaked out, if it does happen. And the reason I say that is I think that's probably more than that time. And the reason I point that out as the timetable for it happening is because I think, with them working on it right now, I just feel that, something is going to occur. Like the animation's being worked on right now, the story elements, finishing touches on the scripts and all that are being worked on. And that takes a lot of time, so I will not be surprised that the aftermath of that process, something happens to where information gets leaked out. in the time frame I could see that happening, like I said, would be mid-September, early November. But like I said, it's a wait and see situation, and that's all we can really do. But what are your thoughts on Masters of the Universe Revelation Season 2, subtitle Revolution? What do you see occurring in the second season? When do you think potentially leaks could happen from a timetable perspective? How do you think they could work around getting She-Ra involved in some capacity? Let me know what your thoughts are. Comment below. Super thanks will be enabled after the premiere. Live chat at your speculations during the premiere. And super chats and super stickers will also be available as well at the same time, if you can do it. And until next time, guys, again, let me know what your thoughts are. And I'm out.